Welcome to the Wise Women Podcast and our debut season, Wisdom's Discovery, Finding Your Center at the Edge. Because some moments in life call us to our edge and then beckon us to expand beyond it. In this season, we dive into the shared experiences of 20 remarkable women. And through honest conversation, we explore together the moments that shape us, stretch us, undo us, and ultimately return us to ourselves. I'm Catherine Jelinek, and this is the Wise Women Podcast. Hello, everyone. So you're in for a treat when you get to meet Stacy Luckensmeyer, certified EOS implementer. Stacy, thank you so much for being here with us to share your story today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Okay, here's our starting question. So where does your story begin?
Even that makes me emotional. Yeah. I'm 53 years old, and really, my story began when I was 21, and I had married just the sweetest human on the planet. A big guy we met in college when he was playing basketball. And he just looked, one, like a college athlete, but two, like a genuinely kind person, right? And I knew that that was somebody that I wanted to get to know. And flash forward a year and a half later, we'd gotten married, and I was teaching kindergarten at the time, and he was working in special ed in a contained resource room with some kids that had some really strong needs. And we were living in his small hometown in Central Washington and just set ourselves up for a really peaceful, quiet community life where, I was looking forward to having a family and just, settling in. And this, as you can guess, was not how life played out, right? It was a few months after we got married when started noticing some things with him. Just his health did not seem right. And he covered it up for quite a while. And ultimately, just there was something wrong that he couldn't hide for too much longer. And eventually,
what were the early signs?
Early signs, exhaustion, absolute irritability. This is probably a very nice way to say it, irritability. And I mean, this angel of a human who suddenly had, quite a temper on him that just even his family was like, where's that coming from? And then there was internal bleeding and just, I mean, it went from exhausted and cranky to blood loss and pale and, we got to get you to the doctor and figure out what's going on.
And you're both in your early 20s.
Yeah. He was 23. So, wow. I mean, the rodeo began at that point in time. And we'll just pause and sit in a moment with the rodeo began. So I'm feeling that. Yeah. We were expecting at this point in time already our first child by the time illness issues really became prevalent. And so, my husband still went to work. That man walked across the street. I mean, this is how small town we were in. He walked across the street to the elementary school in the morning, and he worked, came home, and was just kind of done for the day, let's have some fun. Let's talk. It was just kind of all off the table because it was everything he could do to manage just going to work, taking care of those kids, and coming home at the end of that day. And there was a loneliness instantly in that, and it just got deeper and bigger. There was a chasm between the two of us that he didn't want to talk about what he was going through. He didn't want to even talk to the doctors about what was happening. He didn't want to acknowledge it ultimately to himself. And it wasn't able to give a whole lot more either. And so, I started really early on having to think a little further ahead than normally would early on in your marriage, right? Thinking, okay, we've got a baby on the way. I've got this guy here who, hey, we kind of planned on me being able to stay home with the kids on and off as needed, and that was not looking like it was going to be possible. And what actually really is the most important thing for us to focus on in life right now? And at the same time, it's not really us who can focus, it's me. What is the thing that I need to focus on in our life right now, and the plans that I might need to be making?
And then what was that? What were you
Yeah,
thinking to focus on at the
yeah.
time?
The immediate was, let's have this baby. Let's keep Matt as healthy as possible. And the doctors didn't really know what was wrong. They thought they knew, but ultimately it ended up taking 12 years for them to come up with an actual diagnosis. So we chased some different rabbit trails along the way there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. And, we compressed a lot in the first few years of marriage. There were some periods of time where he was really not well. And there were some periods of time where he was. And we had our first little boy. And then we had a second little boy who was an absolute miracle, because just with his health, we didn't think anything like that would actually be possible.
Wow.
But so grateful. And, there were a lot of days, and I've told my boys this story many times. There were a lot of days in that first handful of years where all I could do was pray for strength. And I realized some years later that the answer to that prayer for strength was God giving me those two boys. These are the people that we are building our family for, that we are fighting for. And whether it's fighting for life for my husband, because some days it was all that, or whether it was fighting for just communication and trying to build joy into our life, in that they were the strength that I needed to see clearly what was most important to me, what my non-negotiables were. And ultimately it was my family. No matter what, I was going to fight the fight for my family and create as best as I could the life for our family that we wanted. Yeah. I will flash forward a little bit for us. In that small town in Washington, a lot of my husband's medical care couldn't be addressed in that region. So, we spent a lot of time in different hospitals in Seattle. And, some of the little things that I tried to do with the kids, there were emergency transports to Seattle for him. There were planned, scheduled doctor visits over there where they'd say, we got to actually admit him and have a little medical procedure we need to do. And so I created these little rituals for us where they'd assign him, they'd take him from the ER, and ultimately assign him to a room. A couple times it was the ICU, other times it was a normal room. And we'd get there. The boys and I would get to that room before they wheeled him in. And so we'd jump on the bed.
That's
And,
great.
yeah, just even though they did not like that because the sheets were sanitary, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But hey, how do we make these little moments positive, fun, celebratory, whatever we can create in this, right? So that these are not moments of trauma for my children. They may internally be traumatic moments for me, and I can promise you they were traumatic moments for my husband. But we've got these two people that we have to normalize this for and still build a real life around this, where they see these little steps. Daddy is in a hospital bed, which is exactly where he needs to be to get the care that he needs to have. And there's nothing to be afraid of here in those moments,
Wow.
Yeah.
You're so wise and you were so young.
or I was so young and so blind to a lot of things, right? And it was a gift. It could go either way, Catherine.
Well, whatever it was, there's wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. The real irony in trying to create a fearless environment for my kids was that it was not a fearless environment for me. And I remember one day in particular, Matt had been in the hospital again for a couple weeks, and they did not know what to do for him next. And it was kind of touch and go. So one afternoon, my boys were with family, Matt's family, because that time there had been so long, right? And they were a little bit older. They'd started school, and we needed to kind of keep them in that school schedule. So thank goodness for a couple of really great friends and some family that helped make sure they got school in the morning, they got home at night, and I could be with Matt and go back and forth and spend as much time with him as possible. And one day when the doctor said, we don't know what to do next. We're just going to have to wait and see how his body responds and if he's going to make it. And I left that room because I needed some breathing space. Matt was sleeping, and I got in the elevator, and I rode that elevator up and down, up and down, up and down. One, because I did not know where to go, but two, because I realized that every person that got on that elevator as I was on it, I realized I just wanted to start grabbing people and saying, please help me find a way. You have to know something. You've got expertise somewhere. What do you know that might help my husband? And I realized that one is a little bit of a desperate reaction. And I needed to stay still for a little bit and think through this. And most importantly, not grab anybody and actually ask. Yeah, yep. But to think through what is happening. What is happening? What is this? And there was definitely some desperation going on there, just a need for answers, a situation where I had no ability to control anything that was going on. And I wanted someone who could create control here. And as I rode up and down, I faced a few facts. One, there is nobody actually in the western half of the US that knew more than that specialist with him did. And if that man said, just wait and see, he was right. And the other thing I knew was that I was not in a puddle on the floor of that elevator. I was still standing, wanting to take action somewhere, somehow, but I couldn't for this immediate situation. And yet there was still a lot of fight in me. And where could I put that energy? If I can't control and change this situation, what can I control and change? And by the time I walked out of that elevator, I was ready to put that energy somewhere. I just wasn't sure quite where yet. And that was a real turning point in life for me. Just a simple day on an elevator in a not so simple moment where I recognized that there's no surrender in me, even when I can't control the situation. And instead, I was going to choose who I would be in that situation, who I could become through that situation, and who my family would see in that.
Want to say something too, though, is that you weren't fighting reality. I mean, like you definitely had your resistances to reality, but you were choosing what you could do from it.
From it, yeah.
Like you did surrender to okay, this man is the best man. I surrender to that. There's nothing to do right now. I surrender to that. But then you were like, I have energy to move and I can do something. So show me where.
Yeah. Yep. Show me where. And, I was taking those actions before these thoughts came together in my head.
Mm-hmm.
No, every day that we got the opportunity to jump on a hospital bed, I was choosing to create joy. I was choosing to create love. I was choosing to create positivity and optimism. I just didn't understand the power of that yet, or what I could do with that, or actually the long-term impact it could have on my kids and, on my husband, let alone as I started at 53, being able to look back at the long-term impact, that has had on me. You know, we eventually left that hospital. My husband made it. He made it the next time, and he made it the next time, and he made it the next time. And we've been married for over 30 years. So there's your spoiler alert on that one, right? Yep, yep. And he has watched me through all of this, and we talk about it a little easier now. It's still hard, but he has watched me reinvent myself 4 different times through 4 different major stages in life for us. And, the me that I was before or when we met, when we married, I created that me in the first 21, 22, 23 years of my life.
Yeah.
Our parents have so much guidance in that, right? But it's still up to us. And then all of this happened. And, this sweet, innocent little Stacy, who was going to be a kindergarten teacher forever and was going to live in this small town with her husband forever, and raise babies and have a simple life, became something very, very different. And, the pressure of having a lot of medical bills to pay.
Yeah.
That would change you right there, right? Having to keep a roof over our heads, try and make sure that there were still some extras in life for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as well as having a little more or a lot more control over my time so I could take care of Matt when he needed it. Because there were some extensive periods where he needed a lot from me. I couldn't work in a public school system. It was not going to work well with that. So I started a business. I figured out what it was that I could do that was a really not just marketable skill, that was pretty valuable, and started a business with a friend at first, and then took that business over when it just wasn't really what they wanted, and then grew that and started another one, and grew that and started another one. And then I sold, and then I bought another, and I expanded that. And this is stuff that I never thought I would ever done in my life, I'd never taken a business class in high school or college ever. And it was a figure it out as I go along. And I have said before, desperation is a really great teacher if you listen and take the chance and push yourself a little bit further forward to do things you never thought you would do or need to do, right? Yeah, yeah. And that reinvention and finding new abilities and creating new skills, the balance of, here's these things in our personal world that I cannot control. And instead, I can actually put time, effort, and energy into serving, other people and helping my employees and helping my clients and doing these other things that create this counterbalance of all this good in the world for all this challenge that we're dealing with at home. And, my kids got to see that. They got to see. Yeah, yep. They got to see Mama take control over everything that she could. And I will admit there were some over controlling things that were.
Okay, what mother does not have that to admit,
Yes, yeah. But at the same time, trying to, why was I doing it? For my family. Yeah, yep. For the roof over our heads, for paying the bills, and to try and make sure we had as much fun, and the ability to control my time turned out to be a huge theme for me because it meant I could design my work with my businesses so that I got to see my kids off for school in the morning. I got to be home in the afternoon when they got there. And yeah, me and my assistant were working in the back office in my house, but I was there when my kids walked in the door. And when they got to do their homework, we were doing our homework, Yeah. And just
you are my hero. My God. Just like you doing this decades before this is normal,
So much so. Yeah, so much so. Okay, so my decades before it's normal. When my older son was 5, he was 2 weeks into kindergarten. And as I'm trying to get him in the shower one morning, he looks at me, he goes, Mom, I don't want to go to school. It is so boring. Oh my gosh, we've got 13 years of this. What? What do I say? What do I do? How do I respond to this?
In there. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I said, honey, you need to learn everything you can. This is me trying to be inspiring. You need to learn everything you can in school and outside of school. So someday when you grow up, you can decide what kind of company you want to run. And my son just, his shoulders dropped, his hands dropped, his head went back, and he goes, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to be a dad, and only moms can run companies.
Wow.
That had no idea that perception of normal was that deep in my son's mind, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Wow, love you. Oh, and
I was
him and
just,
his sweetness, and he just wants to be
no,
the dad.
yeah, I'm going to be a dad. Yep.
Oh, yes. All of the good.
Yeah, yes,
Wow.
all the good, exactly. And also realizing, okay, I've got to shift the balance back the other way. My kids
Yeah,
are
yeah.
doing what's possible for them, and it doesn't matter. Yes, role in a household, gender, any of that. And so that was another intentional set of work that I realized I had to do there too, Yeah.
How fascinating. What kind of companies did you run?
All different and for different purposes. The very first one, started out just doing bookkeeping, and that
Okay.
grew into advising and other things. Got some education behind that made a big difference. And then at one point I had 9 people working for me, and we needed childcare, all of us. And I'm like, I'm going to start that for us. And I realized,
And started for other
other
people.
people enrolled in this, then that covers costs for what I needed for my own kids, and what my people could need as well. And so, the first company I grew for 10 years, the second business, for 9. I was doing some consulting work, if you will, for another business, and ultimately bought that, doing, marketing development work for businesses and such. So I've owned a few different franchises at this point. I've done real estate rentals and such, and the adaptability
Yeah,
has
I
been
was gonna
really
say, what
critical.
haven't you done at this point
Yeah.
to make it work? I mean,
I even tried the whole sell 3 in a row and retire early thing. I was 36
wow.
when I did that, and I was successfully retired for 9 months, and it was the longest 9 months of my life. There were 2 caveats to this retirement. Each of those business sales, it was time, it was the right time. Life, I was not the owner to take them to the next level at that point, and they were really timed around healthcare needs for my husband.
Wow.
The third one was probably my best exit. I'd bought a company. I'd tripled it in 5 years, and it was a 10x sale for me. The
Congratulations.
and it was the one I had thought I was going to hold on to forever. I loved it. But I needed to travel a bit for that one. I'd expanded through Washington, and the doctor told me, after my husband had had kind of an emergency surgery at Thanksgiving that year, and when we were back in Seattle again in December, he said, he's not healing, and you are going to have to take care of this for probably about a year, and you're going to have to be by his side pretty much the entire time. He had some quite an internal infection, and they actually had the little gory detail for you. When your body has an infection inside, it's going to find a way out. And his, from breastbone all the way down, for that particular surgery, I shouldn't say last, and inability to heal because of that infection, and it popped it back open again.
Whoa.
So when that happens, I'm literally looking at a doctor in an emergency room telling him, well, just clean it out and sew it back up again. And he laughed at me and he said, no, we'll clean it out, but we can't close it back up again because the infection is then going to have the perfect environment to reestablish itself. So we're
So
going to
you
have
keep
to
them opened?
clean and pack that for until he heals. And these were his words, until he heals cell by cell from the inside out. I did not understand fully what that was, but my
Okay.
husband's sister is a surgical PA and she knew. And I left that hospital room and I started calling every home health agency I could get a hold of because I am not made to do that work.
Yeah,
Nope.
I get it. You're like
No.
running and selling companies at this point and raising a bunch of kids, and
Right.
you're not necessarily like, yeah, I get it.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And I ended up going through training at that hospital for how to do this because there was no home health agency that would touch it. He said, nope, there's too much liability involved in that. And at the same time, he was stable enough where they couldn't justify keeping him in hospital.
Whoa.
That guy gets transported home
Oh my God.
and I am gloving up and I am unpacking and I am repacking and I am learning how to burn down cells that are not healing like they should.
And when you say packing and unpacking, you mean you're going underneath his open
There's
skin?
there's gauze, lots of gauze. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is not stuff we're supposed to see as human beings. It's not stuff we're supposed to do. And, Matt's sister, absolutely designed to do things like that.
Mm.
And for me, it was as difficult the last time I had to do it as it was the first time. Because I've had lots of people say, well, I'm sure it got easier. No, no, no. I have many, many days where, I have almost passing out stories as I'm trying to handle this stuff. There are other infections he had that rather than a large opening, I had a number of I had multiple small openings where I had to slide these semi-rigid tubes in through these pathways that the infection had created. I'm watching your face, Catherine.
I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I had to flush lidocaine through those pathways so that it would numb everything. And then I had to go back in there and I had to flush a bleach solution through there essentially to try and I had to do this multiple times a day in order to try and keep
What?
these infections down. I know. And I'm kneeling on the floor. My husband's laying across this bed. He's got his back to me and I'm trying to enter these areas and not poke through organs,
Not
try
puncture
and
a lung?
heal.
Yeah.
I know, right? Knowing that if I don't get the infection thoroughly 3-4 times a day, he may not make it, right? Going to cause more problems. Also knowing if I puncture something, I'm causing a big problem. Literally, his life is in my hands on a day-to-day basis for this stuff. And I'm shaking. I am dripping sweat. I am slowly trying to do all of these things exactly right, knowing just enough to do it acceptably, but not knowing if I'm doing it well enough at all. And the only thing that tells me is that he's still with me the next day, and then still with me the next day, and still with me the next day, And in the background, my kids are going to school, and my employees are doing stuff, and I am running home from a client to do another procedure for him, and then hopping back in the car and driving to the next one, and then running home later and doing it again, and then hopping in the car and going to the next one. Wild, wild world.
That is,
And all of this, this paints a picture of, I think I'm going to use the word intention and go internal here for a bit because it's one thing to say, oh, this is a really capable human who can do all of these things. But the real work every day was deciding how I was going to show up and who I was going to be through all of those things. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Yep. My husband, as amazing as he is also a pain in the ass.
Get it.
And as a patient, when he was really, really sick, he was an angel.
Really?
Yeah, absolute angel. He was every nurse's favorite patient.
Mm.
And I knew when he was starting to get better and starting to recover some energy because he got not so angelic.
My gosh.
Getting better does not mean that he was not in serious pain every day, right? And so when you see a creature of any kind in pain, how is that creature responding to the world, right? The nervous system says everything is a threat. And that means your wife, too. That means your wife who has to do these really uncomfortable medical procedures on you. Yeah, yep. That means when I needed his attention on something, decision-making assistance, the house, whatever it was, he did not have a lot of extra to give. And there were stretches of time where he was well enough to go to work. He was not working in a school district. He drove a truck for city sanitation for years because that was what he could do. So he would get up in the morning, he would go to work and drive his truck, and he would come home. And that was, again, everything that he had was given to that. But he still had this family with some needs, right? And so he was frustrated on most days. He was angry a lot of days. If this had happened to you, wouldn't you be? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
But I might even be angry if I was you and you were not.
Yeah. But what happens in a household when you've got two angry people?
Well, look at you though. Like, yes,
Uh,
I hear you.
and, right? And I remember a conversation with a colleague once. And, I never talked about my personal life professionally at all because, one, it's too much for most people. I knew that then. It still is talking about it now, right? Two, my professional world was where I went to feed myself after sometimes being just depleted regularly from managing what was happening personally.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really healthy for me to keep a separation between those two. And there was also some insecurity in me that said, if people knew what it was I was managing over here, they may question my ability to do the work at the level that my company's promising we're going to do for them, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
never wanted that to flow into it either.
Mm.
So, random conversation where a little bit came out with somebody that I felt like I had a lot of trust with, a colleague. And their response to that was, I don't understand why you've stayed.
Oh.
It's like, fascinating. Okay, well, he never asked for this to happen to him. And they said, flat back, neither did you. And I had no ability to respond to that then. I just let it sit, moved the conversation on to other things. But by the time I went to bed that night, I realized that those statements actually were more of a reflection on that individual
It's
and how
true.
they would approach a challenge than it needed to reflect on me.
Well done.
Yeah, yeah,
But can I ask, because it's there, is
yeah.
I can't imagine this started so soon after your marriage started. Like it's not like you had like 8 years of a foundation and
I know.
then your marriage was this in a lot of years.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah,
kind of like, forgive me for the frankness, and I don't want to feel like that. But it's almost like, what were you fighting for within the context of your marriage, given that it had been so much of it?
yeah. Some really simple and brutal truths here. And I am not offended by any question you can ask.
Thank you.
So no holds barred. This man is the father of my children. and forever tied to them. And every day that they were going to, for the rest of their life, have to deal with their father in some way, whether it's positive or negative, I never wanted them to have to deal with that alone. It was a mess sometimes, and I was going to be there for it. And there were good days sometimes, and I was going to be there for it. It was a lot for an adult to carry. It was going to be too much for my kids to have to carry alone. And I wanted to show them how to carry it well. I wanted to show them how to love someone through the best and the worst of times, because that's all we're promised in life, the best and the worst of times, right? We are not promised love. We are not promised care. We are promised some of the best and the absolute worst of times. And who would I be if I left? I would be the person that left my kids to handle that on their own a lot. I would be the person that left my husband to handle that alone. I didn't want to be that human. I knew that there was better than that. I did not know on any day what the outcome would be or could be. I will admit, I questioned so many times, is this actually what's best for my children? What are they seeing? How is that landing in them? I got external therapy for my kids to make sure that we had an outside set of eyes on them.
That's wonderful. Like very wise. Yeah.
What am I not seeing that I should know about, that I don't have the expertise for, right? I made sure that we had that voice in our life as well. And then I day to day did the work in those moments, saying, okay, I don't know if this is going to become a repeat behavior from my husband that my children would deploy. How do I help them see that behavior, know that that causes damage, know that that's not who we have to be, and also have empathy and love for their dad, even while saying that's not the standard we want in our family. That's not the standard I want for myself. We had lots of ongoing conversations about that, because a child at 4 can't understand that, right? But a child at 4 can understand the words, how did that make you feel? Where in your life do you think you've made other people feel like that?
Right.
Importantly, your little brother, right? We had each other that we were practicing on at all times. Every family does. We just had to practice with more communication and more intention in the behaviors we chose. And I had to make myself aware of it every day. And I wanted to make my children aware of it every day too. You know, there's a cycle of behavior that we had to break. And I wanted us to be proud of that work every day.
Whoa, girl. Like maybe some of the most profound family advice I've ever received. You're not giving advice as much, sharing experience, but that is beyond remarkable. And I want to know too, today, different era in your life and marriage.
Yeah.
Give us the epilogue. What kind of marriage is it today? How's his health? What happened, you know?
Okay, so, I'm a huge fan of modern medicine and the pharmaceutical industry.
All right.
Because they have made, ultimately what they discovered with him was that he has a genetic fault, which means there's no cure for this thing. And instead, they have developed enough medications now that have allowed him to live in what they call a medicated remission. So if you met my husband today, you would see the college athlete that I married, and you would never know he'd ever been sick. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, built like a refrigerator, strong as an ox. Yep. And my boys are all almost as tall as their dad and big and strong. And we have spent the last, it's been 9 years, I think, in that medicated remission, relearning how normal people live, right? Medical emergencies are so rare in our life. It's not that they haven't happened, but they're so rare for us now. And I remember the first few years trying to figure out what I'm fighting against now. What am I fighting for now? Wait a minute, I don't have to fight anymore. I don't have to have my back up and be strong. And when my body started to realize that, the tears started falling. The strangest phenomenon I've ever experienced. It's like all the tension and stress of those 22 years, though I would wake up in the morning and the tears would just start falling. And then I'd show up at whatever work where I was at that morning, and they would stop. And at the end of the day, I'd get back in the car and they'd start again until I went to sleep. I wasn't stopping, nothing. They were just streaming. Yep. And I allowed it. I went, okay, there is something happening here. But I was also really careful who I allowed to see that. Things changed in my life. I stopped going to church. And this is going to sound horrible, but I'll be honest. Another brutal truth. No one would understand the value of those tears. They were precious to me. I had earned them. And I considered those my diamonds, every single one of them. And the pressure had taken this coal and created these diamonds, and the diamonds were falling out. And anyone around me would think, and people commented at first, you're feeling guilty for something. I can see you're upset about something. No.
What? No. People, shut your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about.
And I realized that there are a lot of people on this planet who don't deserve my diamonds. They are not safe with them. And I needed to give myself space and time, just me and my family, to really focus in on how to become the next iteration of ourselves. My husband did not have to feel the pain every day. He had to rewire behaviors that came with that, and that was hard work. I had to rewire behaviors that I'd had to deploy that served me well in those years, but they didn't need to serve me anymore. How could I still be a powerful and intentional person in a completely different way? And that's been our work of the last 9 years. The transformation in my husband's been huge. The transformation in me has been huge. My kids, same thing. Last weekend, I was away for some work training, and my youngest son called my husband and said, hey, I want to travel across the state. I just want to come hang out with you for the weekend. I never dreamed on those hard days that this would be my family, that we would love each other, that we would see what 360-degree love actually is, and that we would enjoy each other's companies. I didn't know it would pay off, but damn it, it did. I have everything I wanted.
I don't know if I've met a person who deserves it more.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard work and it was worth it.
So if you had to give us the summary, which I can't imagine because there's so many pieces and threads and wisdom and beauty, but how would you close this story? What is the discovery and the wisdom you've gained here?
I think the real discovery goes back to that internal piece. We have no idea what's going to happen to us, but everything happens through us in some way. And every day I considered what was happening, and I considered who I wanted to be in that moment and through and beyond that moment. Every human on the planet knows how we want to be treated, how we deserve to be treated, what kindness looks like, what patience looks like, what love looks like, what dignity, looks like, what peace looks like, what joy is, what self-control is. I leaned into all of those things on a day-to-day basis and chose and thought, okay, what needs to come out of me right now that's going to show those things? My words, my emotions, my actions, intention every day on who I wanted to be. And I've discovered over 30 years that that really does get you everything that you want.
There's no better way to close. Stacy, thank you for sharing this story so open-heartedly and with a lot of courage, given that I'm guessing like not that many people get to hear the full story. Even I'm sure there's not full story here. There's probably so much more, but holy shit, and thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
What a pleasure. Okay, everyone. Hope you had your box of tissues, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for loving Stacy along with me, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Wise Women podcast. You can find the book, Wisdom's Discovery, Finding Your Center at the Edge, on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And keep listening to the wisdom that your life is offering you.